Hello, good afternoon, and welcome everyone to the 2023 edition of Jamf's Back to School event. Very pleased to welcome you back if you joined us last year, and if it's your first time joining us, great to have you. Reflecting as I was 12 months since our last, almost to the day since our last Back to School event, a lot has happened in the world of technology, both here within Jamf and in the tech world in general in that period. We've seen the rise of AI, with ChatGPT in particular causing a stir, offering both perhaps a threat and an opportunity to education, depending on your point of view. Apple announced their first step, hardware-wise, into the world of augmented and virtual reality with the eagerly anticipated Vision Pro, and I'm sure we're all looking forward to that one's release next year. Here at Jamf, we launched a whole new product specifically for education with Jamf Safe Internet, aiming to keep students safe online wherever and whenever they choose to learn. And just last week at the Jamf Nation User Conference, we announced a whole host of new features and enhancements across our product lines, including lots to get excited about for education. And you'll hear more about that just very soon. Earlier this month, we also introduced our first ever instructor-led certification and course for Jamf School with the Jamf 200. Absolutely ideal for anyone deploying and managing devices using the Jamf School platform. So let's have a look at today's agenda and what we've got in store. As mentioned a few moments ago, we announced a lot of new features and enhancements at JNUC. Shortly, we're going to hear from Matt, who's going to take you through those just to ensure that you don't miss a thing. Afterwards, we're absolutely thrilled to invite our team of education leaders to discuss what always seems to be a hot topic in education, device refresh. How do we approach it? When is the best time of year to do it? And ever increasingly important, how can we make sure that we can keep technology up to date to provide the best learning experiences, both for our learners and of course our teachers? Our panelists will share their insights, plus give you the opportunity to answer any questions that you may have. To lead us through the first section, I would now like to invite Matt Poulin to the stage, our Senior Product Marketing Manager for Education.
Thanks,
Hello,
Craig.
Matt. How are you?
Yeah, great. And yeah, like you said, so much to reflect on over this last year and look forward to. Like last week at JNUC, some big announcements that we'll get into in a second. And just great to have that time with customers again. I think, we believe in our customers. We want to do our best for our customers, and hearing some of the feedback from our customers last week was an absolute joy to hear. So yeah, can't wait to kind of dive into some of those updates that we have for everyone today.
Awesome. Without further ado, I'll hand you over to Matt. Thanks, everyone.
Okay, so yeah, like Craig said, so much to kind of get through and showcase as we kind of reflect on where we've been and what's coming ahead of us into the future. And I think it's a really exciting time in education. I think with all of those kind of developments going on with Apple, with devices, we've just obviously had a new update to both iPad OS and Mac OS as well. So lots going on. But I think the key thing that we always want to talk about at Jamf is what is at the heart of everything we do. And as you know, our commitment as a company remains the same, and that is to manage and secure Apple in education. And at the very heart of everything we do, it's to deliver on that promise to empower student success. We want to support that ecosystem that surrounds everything that the educator, the student, the parent, the IT admin, leadership are all trying to do to ensure that student's outcome at the end, whether they're using the technology or not, is the best it could absolutely be. And we know that we can't do this without everybody's support. The feedback we get from our customers is absolutely fantastic to help us and you continue to strive for that mission. So before we move into the rest of it, this is just a huge thank you from us to you. So let's take a look at this whole idea of deployment and how we look at this concept of management and security within Apple and education. Now, we often talk about this concept of successful deployment, or in our case, we talk a lot about zero-touch deployment. about getting that device ready for teaching and learning right out of the box. We are really, really passionate about making sure that although technology has a huge part to play in teaching and learning, we almost want it to be invisible in that step. So teachers, leaders, students can just get straight to what they need to use the device for, and it doesn't slow anything down or cause any interruptions. We know that the goal of every institution is to achieve this. But success sometimes looks slightly different depending on what you're doing within your institution. It could be as simple as all devices are connected to the internet. It could be that all devices are updated, that all the apps are in the right place, and that all of those things are actually being used to their full potential. So when we think about a successful deployment, we actually think we might mean a purposeful deployment. Now, this is where you get everything that you want to do straight out of the box, because the thought starts with its ultimate purpose. We know that when schools invest in technology, they think about that ultimate vision for teaching and learning and what those devices are going to do to support that. That's often why people make the decision to go with Apple technology in the first place, because it meets their learning goals, it meets their creative goals, or whatever it is they're trying to get out of the curriculum. Much more, I guess, than just simply having access to the internet or resources. So when we think about what the role of the device is when it's being deployed, how is it also then set up and configured to meet that purpose in a way that makes it a great experience for the end user, while still meeting the requirements of the institution and the IT admins? Now, we think about this because it's really important to understand that when people invest in Apple devices, they're probably doing it based on a consumer understanding of what that device can do for them. Many people have got access to an iPad or an iPhone for personal use, and people enjoy that kind of seamless and easy use that they get with those devices. They're fairly straightforward in terms of updating them. You can pretty much manage them yourself. So when you get hold of a device like an iPad in a education setting, you're kind of expecting it to have that same setup. And I know from working with education customers myself in terms of training, sometimes that experience isn't necessarily always there. And we believe at Jamf that we want to make it the best end user experience as possible that meets the kind of requirements that you have in that first place for why you've wanted to use that device. Let's think about this in a couple of ways. Those devices that get deployed to a teacher will differ to those of a student, and it needs to be in that way. Teachers will have certain restrictions on their device because of safety and security, and there'll be additional restrictions for those for students for focus and additional security measures that need to be in place. Those student devices then often need further differentiation depending on the age of the student or the subject or whatever it is that the student is actually trying to do with the device. And then when we think about that deployment in terms of the admin purposes, for those staff that might not actually be in the classroom, so where you've deployed devices for the reception staff, it could even be for library services, etc. Those needs of those devices differ again. So we know that all devices are not the same. Apple devices, like we said, have been chosen for creativity, mobility, accessibility, and that becomes part of the purposeful deployment as well. We think about these devices as being used in ways for independent learning, for students to explore freely as they start to navigate, explore, and showcase all of their new understanding. But do they have a specific focus on the subjects that are being taught? Are those devices being used in a different way, particularly in further or higher education, where the controls might need to be slightly different, but the teaching and learning aspects can still be explored in a similar way to maybe we do in K-12 education? And then when we think about that place in the classroom, the purpose is really about making sure students have the tools when they need them and in a way that sets them up for the most success that they can have. Now, we think about this from the point of view of the teacher. Teachers need confidence to use these devices. We've seen an influx of devices over the last few years, probably even more so because of the pandemic. Not only that, though, but schools investing heavily in what these tools can do to make sure that students have the best outcome. But teachers need to have the confidence in using these devices because they spend an awful lot of time planning for lessons that they don't want things to be let down by an app not being on the device or not being updated to the point they wanted them to be. There's also the fear that sometimes there's so much on that device, they might lose the focus of the students who start to explore, the multitude of apps that they might have available. And we're really keen at Jamf to make sure that that role of IT administration goes all the way through to the student outcomes at the very end. How has that IT admin been able to empower the teacher to take control of their learning to make sure that that outcome is the best possible outcome for that student, and the devices are used to the best of their ability at the whole time? So when we think about this key element, the purposeful deployment, what is it that your deployment is actually trying to achieve? And how can we at Jamf support you in achieving that goal? Well, when we think about who we're supporting, we are really excited to be supporting really purposeful deployments globally. Last year, we did look at some of these updates in terms of the schools and students we support, but we've had an increased impact over those last 12 months. We are increasingly honored to support over 40,000 schools, empowering over 42 million students via either a one-to-one or shared Apple devices. And we see amazing success stories globally. And we're keen to highlight as many of these as possible in the presentations that we put out and the case studies that we put together. And again, this is a huge thank you to our customers for utilizing our tools in such a way that it has that great impact on the students. When we think about how we do this, we kind of break this down into our strategic approach to how we want to make a difference in the classroom. All of our tools come from a point of research and reference based on what we see is happening within the market. And we thought it would be quite useful to share some of this with you today. First of all, when we think about purposeful deployment, it's about making sure the technology gets to where it is needed as quickly and efficiently as possible, and that the process is as seamless throughout that year. Now, thanks to Apple and Jamf, gone are the days of waiting for a specific time period to deploy devices. We know IT admins have busy periods of time, specifically at this time of the year, about those pinch points. But the reality is, if you use the right tools, you can actually manage this well at any point of the year. And we talk about everything starting in education. It's the first place of work for students, but also a place of work for educators, admin staff, and everyone else that work to empower that student success. So whether the tools in your hands are there to support that daily running of the building or to create a poster on global warming, you need them to just work when you need them to work. And we need to ensure that these devices are well managed and secure. Now, we have been part of some pretty large deployments all around the world and have proven that ability to support those deployments, whether they be 1,000 or 10,000 devices per day. We really want to make sure that that experience of unboxing a device to impacting in the classroom is the best possible experience it can be. But a device with great management is simply just a well-managed box if the purpose behind it isn't met. Now, in education, like we said, the purpose of these devices is to support that end user, the students or the staff that utilize that technology to affect change in the learner outcomes, reducing teacher workload, amongst many other benefits. As we look at that ever-changing world of technology and its impact on the workforce, we see student skills in understanding that technology go way beyond how they use it in their learning, but it has an impact on how they can utilize those tools for their future careers, whatever they may be. Now, we've heard some really amazing stories just last week about how the technology is being used to actually create new career opportunities for students. If you didn't get a chance to watch our keynote at JNUC, we had two guests on stage with us, one from further education, talking about their career enhancement opportunities, where they're teaching them the Jamf tools as part of their courses to empower them to go and get jobs in a market where Jamf is being utilized in those fields. A really great story of how using the technology is actually creating new opportunities. And then we also heard from a K-12 example where the same is being done, but with a lot younger children, showing them how the tools can be used to make sure that the jobs of the future are jobs that they can easily walk into. It's no surprise knowing that so many people these days with a little bit of technology understanding are really employable in many, many industries as we start to see them impacted by all of those changes. And we are passionate that this all starts in education. If you can empower students to think differently about what the tools can do, it will change their future career projections as they go through education. If they only ever see technology as something which is clamped down and restricts them, what is that going to do for their thoughts about what life could look like in terms of the future? And then there's the wider impact of the role of technology. It's so much more than just simply having access to the internet or showing a slide at the front of the classroom. It changes so many aspects of school life and way beyond the classroom. We've seen devices extend that school day with one-to-one deployments that allow students to take their learning at any place at any time, supporting those students that might simply need that extra time with the content or be deeply engrossed in that content that they just want to go and find out something else when they get home. Additionally, there's that reduction in workload due to the IT efficiency, reduction of help desk tickets as staff become more empowered to fix things themselves, impact on homeschool relations because of improved communication, and the cost savings when you transform learning and teaching from being paper-based and restricted to a classroom to being an online experience, when not only saves the cost of pens and books, but also impacts on student access, improvement in feedback opportunities, supports accessibility for all learners. Now, in essence, standardizing that Apple and Jamf experience maximizes that total education impact delivered to your students, your staff, and all the users of those devices. So this kind of brings us back to this idea of management and security of Apple devices in education. For all of this to be successful and, more importantly, purposeful, deployment is something that has to be considered from the very start as part of that vision. Understanding the changes of future industry, supporting educators in the classroom, changes in the operation and security, making sure that network is maintained for it all to just work and the users are protected. Connecting up all of these elements gives it that purposeful deployment. So let's take a look at what this looks like in practice. You've bought your Apple devices. You know that they're the device of choice because you're passionate about what they can do to change things in your environment. You then need to make sure that they're managed successfully to make sure that they can go to where they need to be. That's done through Jamf and Apple School Manager, making sure everything is set up that it is just going to work when it needs to work. You then start to think about how is that management going to extend to the classroom. We are proud to utilize things like Jamf Teacher, Jamf Student, Jamf Parent, and combine that with the tools like Apple Classroom to make sure that the management extends to the classroom to make sure teachers are equally empowered to utilize those tools to make sure they want them in the classroom. And more importantly, they impact on learning at all times. And then we think about extending that. We integrate brilliantly with Microsoft and Google as your back-end tools, whether you're using it for email, productivity tools, etc. We integrate them into our systems to make sure that students, teachers, admins have access to what they need when they need it. That identity as well as access is a critical part of the journey. But then we also extend that with our marketplace offerings, tools like Shobi, Salamander, Explain Everything, that help improve that distribution process, making sure that when that device is unboxed, it has everything you need ready to go to make sure learning and teaching is critical. And then one of the possibly most important things that we see at the moment is that layer of security, not just content filtering that helps make sure that students are safe whilst they're online, but equally the mobile threat defense opportunities, protecting institutions against malware and other ransomware type attacks that we're seeing an ever increasing amount happening within education as well as the rest of industries around the world. This is critical to make sure that systems do not get impacting ultimately on students' time in the classroom and learning. Jamf Safe Internet, the tool that we introduced fairly recently, is one of those tools that really makes sure that you are protected from both a learning and teaching point of view, but also that network as well. And then we finally wrap that around with the professional learning, both from ourselves, but equally extended to the tools that you'll get from Apple partners. Apple Professional Learning is a great way to make sure that teachers understand how they can utilize those tools in the classroom to the best of their ability. Again, thinking about it more than just simply access to the internet that teachers may well be used to, but thinking about how it can transform curriculum and opportunities for all learners. And then we also have those added abilities with Apple Teacher, Jamf Educator, etc., which just make sure teachers just have that ability to find professional learning for themselves and upskill their knowledge and understanding of what these tools can do. Okay, so let's take a look at some of the developments from these different areas within education that really start to develop that education deployment solution. We'll take a look at Jamf School, our flagship education MDM solution, and some of the improvements that we've put into there, some that are coming soon, some that have already been in place for a while now. We'll also take a look at Jamf Safe Internet, some really, really important things that start to impact on the security of your networks that you're looking at. And then finally, some updates to our marketplace, where we have started to develop even greater relationships with partners that can help us support. So let's start with Jamf School. Jamf School is a fantastic tool, purpose-built for education to make sure that both your management and security are in place from day one. We've started to go through the process of updating all of the user interface because we know that that consistency across all of the interface helps that seamless process. If you're new to Jamf School, you'll appreciate that UI consistency. If you're a current customer of Jamf School, hopefully you've started to see that consistency come into place that just makes your life easier. We're really proud of the fact that Jamf School is a very, very powerful tool, but it seems like a very simple tool because it's designed to have everything you need where you need it. There's a lot of power behind this tool, as you'll see with some of the things that we've brought to it over the last few months, but it just does what we need it to do in education. Some of those enhancements behind the scene include declarative device management. Now, this is an Apple functionality that we're starting to adopt, but we just wanted to highlight that some of these things come into place to again speed up some of the transitions that you'll have when deploying devices. Declarative device management just simply gives you feedback into the console to know what devices have and haven't got on them. And rather than that device always needing to check in with the MDM, they can check in with themselves to see if something needs to be changed. We're looking to bring new opportunities here as Apple release them to us as well. Now, state ramp for us in this part of the world might not seem like something that's important. State ramp is a US initiative which helps companies understand and improve the posture of cybersecurity within their platforms. In America, state ramp is something which you would have to comply to depending on the state you're in. But we've put it to our Jamf School and Jamf Pro instances because we're passionate about having a high compliance model that makes sure all end users benefit. So even those people that aren't in the US will still benefit from the fact that we are thinking about that compliancy of our devices that make sure you are safe when you're utilizing the tools. We're going to take a little bit of a deeper dive into the updated Jamf Teacher UI. For those people that haven't seen Jamf Teacher, it'll be a new opportunity to see some of those extended tools that we spoke about earlier in terms of the classroom management. But just to say, we have updated that Teacher UI experience to make it even better for the teachers when they're utilizing those devices. And then the last couple to think about here are recent updates from both the OS updates that happened last week, as well as some of our updates that we've put in place. Return to service is a new feature that came with iPadOS 17, and we have supported it from day one in Jamf School. In short, this enables admins to erase a device remotely from the Jamf School console while still providing the details of the Wi-Fi network it needs to connect once it re-enrolls. Once that device is wiped, it simply rejoins the Wi-Fi, and thanks to the automated enrollment process, it goes all the way through the setup assistant, taking you back to the home screen, ready to be used again. Now, we see this as a fantastic tool in education to support the likes of library loans or supply teachers that might use the device for a day, and then rather than having to go all the way back to IT admins, can just go to a central location, be wiped without anyone having to touch it, ready to go again. Similarly, in that library setting, loan it out for a lesson and then have everything wiped so it goes back to its home screen and cleared state, so that the next student or group of students can use it as well. We're really excited to see how people take this on board. We know it's going to be a great time-saving tool for IT admins, and we're looking forward to seeing how you put this into place. And please do share some of those use cases that you come up with. And then finally, app installers. This was probably the one that got the biggest cheer when we announced this on stage. App installers has been a tool which has existed in Jamf Pro. We've brought it to Jamf School to really enhance that Mac management experience within the Jamf School, because we know that Jamf School is designed specifically for education, and app installers is something that we know that customers have been asking for. So now you can simply package up those apps that aren't necessarily within the Apple ecosystem to be able to deploy them out to your devices, as simple as deploying a VPP app that you might have as well. So Jamf School going through lots of changes, and those changes don't stop there as we continue to improve that experience for our education customers. Next up, Jamf Safe Internet. Like we said, we launched Jamf Safe Internet last year with an Apple first focus, but we know that schools think about their cybersecurity and content filtering across all of the devices that they have. So we've added Chromebook and Windows support over the last year to really complete that picture. Because the content filtering and network threat prevention is almost regardless of the device, because it's based on the network that you're using, we wanted to make sure that you could have one solution that solves the problems for all of your devices. Having said that, there are some specific things that we can bring to content filtering that really supports Apple devices specifically. We are always going to be Apple first and Apple best. And we like to take some of the functionality that Apple provides to make sure that the user experience is fantastic for you. That's why the on-device content filtering, utilizing Apple's network framework, really starts to improve that security posture on the device, but also increases that privacy protections that students, we know, expect from the devices that they're utilizing. We've also expanded those categories on the device, making it really easy to turn on or off any of those things that you do or do not want your students to be able to see. And then finally, cryptojacking prevention. Now, cryptojacking, for those that aren't aware, is a malicious type of crypto mining where embedded code is used on institutions, computers, tablets, or smartphones, whilst third parties use it to mine cryptocurrency. Seems fairly complicated, but fundamentally the impact on the institution is a slowdown of the efficiency of your devices and also a potential increase in your energy bills. Now, we're proud to make sure that this is part of our Jamf Safe Internet to make sure schools are not impacted by any of this lost time. And then finally, like we said, the marketplace development. We really want to make sure that the marketplace really extends the use of the devices that you have. Over the last year, we've added several new education offerings. Zensory, which is a great tool that can help focus learning, calm people down, a fantastic social and emotional learning tool. Good Notes, which if you haven't seen it, is a fantastic tool for taking notes. It's well named. And really starts to build on that experience that students are starting to get used to by having the pencil alongside the devices they're having. Caligo, which works particularly well at supporting young students and new to English students with spelling and understanding of those things. All of these solutions are there to make sure that you get the best out of your devices. Now, before we go, like I said, I just wanted to showcase some of those Jamf Teacher UI enhancements. So if you haven't seen them yet, Jamf Teacher has changed the way that you interact with the devices that you have in front of you. You now can see all of the allowed websites, allowed apps, and restrictions at all times on your device. So if I go ahead and start a lesson, you'll see all of those restrictions appear on the screen with the time left on them. So at any point, I can go in and make sure that students have access to the right websites, the right restrictions, and the right apps at any one time. And if you haven't seen this in action, you can see on the student screen now that all of those restrictions have automatically been put in place. Now, this is where we talk about empowering teachers to make sure that the devices are set up for exactly what they need to be able to do. We are absolutely passionate about empowering student success. We see technology as a tool that can do that, but we also want to make sure that teachers are comfortable in using those devices. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Jesper and look forward to hearing from our panel about all the things that they're doing with technology as well. Hi, Jesper. Great that you could be with us today.
Hi, Matt. I'm good, and hope you're doing well as well.
Very good. I'll hand it over to you as you host our great panel session.
Thank you so much, Matt. Hello. Today we have a couple of guests with us as well, who has a little bit of, they've done some refresh before, and some might be doing some refresh in the near future as well. So I think I'll start with a short introduction of myself. I'm a channel sales engineer here at Jamf and started here December last year. And I used to be a teacher for about 9 years. And after that, I worked as an ICT coordinator in the municipality of Lund. And today we have with us Catherine, Kaisa, and Simon. So Catherine, tell me a little bit about yourself and your current situation.
Hi everyone, I'm Catherine Thompson. I'm one of the Education Quality Improvement Managers in Scottish Borders, and I'm strategic lead for our education transformation programme called Inspire Learning. So we've got 70 schools. We're quite a rural part of the UK, and we have about 15,000 young people and staff using one-to-one iPads in our part of the world.
Okay. And Simon, what's your situation today? And tell me a little bit about yourself.
Hello, so I'm the head of national infrastructure for Oasis Community Learning. We've got 54 academies across the UK, and we have a full one-to-one iPad deployment. So we deployed 35,000 iPads during the pandemic to give all of our students access to a one-to-one device.
Okay, thank you so much. And Kaisa, tell me a little bit about yourself and also your situation.
Hi, so my name is Kaisa Umlebo, and I work as an ICT development strategist in Sollentuna municipality, which is in the north of the Stockholm region in Sweden. And my background is being a teacher for a very, very long time. And then now I would say that my role right now is to have an overview of the digitalization of the schools in Sollentuna and to help the schools forward in their digitalization process. That's my role.
Okay, thank you all for joining us today. And I have several questions, and let's just start with a general question. I'm curious to know if any of you are leasing iPads today and also perhaps have insurance on your iPads.
So we have leased the majority of our estate in Scottish Borders, and we are halfway through our refresh. We've had a 2-year refresh, so this year 7,500 iPads are being refreshed, and we've decided to lease again. And no, we don't have any insurance on our iPads.
Okay. Does anyone else are leasing iPads or have insurance on your iPads?
Well, I could answer for us, and Sollentuna municipality is responsible for preschools and schools for about, I think we're about approximately 17,000 children and teenagers. And we've had one-to-one devices for our 12K students and high school students since 2011. And we've had a variety of devices throughout the years, but right now we do have Chromebooks or iPads, and I think we got around 12,000 Apple devices registered in our Jamf MDM at the moment. But our schools don't lease their devices. The schools decide completely themselves what devices to buy and when to buy them, when to refresh, and if they want to sell them. And they also decide if they'd like to have insurance, which I actually think none of them have at the moment. So our schools have a lot of autonomy when it comes to these questions.
Okay, thank you so much. And what considerations are needed in terms of age of the device and time when looking for a refresh program? Is there perhaps an ideal time of the year? What do you say, Catherine?
I'm not sure. Our red line in the sand when we were planning the program is that nobody should have a device that was more than 4 years old. So when we put together the budget for the whole program, that refresh was built into the overall cost. And I know that's something that many other areas are struggling with, because it's another quite a substantial amount of capital funding again. So we planned that from the outset. We have split our refresh with the summer holidays for schools in between. So we did secondary or high schools the upper years before summer holidays, and then we've came back after the summer holidays and we're doing our junior schools, the younger learners, down to sort of age 8 to 12. And just really because schools need more support, we need the full team to be in helping with that. So we've got quite a number of what we call primary 4, 5 and 6, so 3-year groups being refreshed and shared iPads at the same time. So a real effort the last 4 weeks of the team to go in and really help our schools get up and running so that transition's smooth. So I'm not sure there's an ideal time, but we've tried to split it into 2 high schools and younger learners.
Okay, how about you, Kaisa?
Well, our schools, since they decide themselves, they decide when they want to refresh their devices, and I think most of them use their summer holidays to do so. But I know that some schools prefer to do it throughout the school year, in quite close cooperation with the teachers to do it together with them and decide when to do it. But in an ideal world, I would say, like Catherine, that you said, like every 4th year, every 3rd year, they would switch devices. But because to us on a municipality level, it's important that the schools have devices that can be updated at least, for security reasons. But of course, to us, the user experience is super important. That is a drive in how to, when to refresh your devices, because, that is the key to success in the classroom, really. So, and if a student can't use some apps or some built-in features, they will get frustrated, and then they will stop working, they will stop creating content, and then of course, the teachers will not let their students use the devices if they're not non-functional. And then we do have a situation where the kids are given, less voice and fewer possibilities to learn and express themselves. So that is so the user experience is really, really important to us at municipality level as well. And last year we finished a really long, like 3-year long multi-school study in the K-12 schools. And you can say that we really deep dived into each and every school's digital teaching and learning environment. And the study focused on many different sort of aspects: digital competencies, infrastructure, device usage and teacher professional learning and the organization of support at each school. And what we could see in that study was that schools that had newer devices, they used more of the built-in features in the iPads and the MacBooks. And the teachers in those schools were generally more positive as well, using technology in the classroom. And then, of course, as a result, the kids got to use their devices more, and then their digital competence grew. So well-functioning devices are super important to us, but we can't tell them to buy new stuff, unfortunately.
Oh, of course. Simon, what are the main issues you face when it comes to Refresh program?
I think, again, as we've said, I think it's just timing, really. I mean, we're slightly governed by our lease program about when we swap ours over, but we work in some of the most deprived areas of the country. So often, the iPad that we provide to the students could be the only source of a digital device for a family, perhaps. So to take that away from them for a period of time while we swap them over isn't really a great user experience, as Kaiser mentioned just a moment ago. I think education is just really busy all of the time, isn't it? So to arrange with one of our academies a point in time to swap over an entire academy's devices is really complex and really challenging, in hand with everything else they need to do every day to educate our children. So I don't think there's a great time. I think it's just all about communication in advance and getting as much lined up as possible, ready to do the swap over, basically.
Catherine and Kaiso, do you have the same experience?
Yes, definitely. Just like you said, that you could do it. There's never a good time to do it, is it, Simon? So, but if you have a really good communication with the teachers, you could find the sort of the sweet spot in the calendar where you could do it. So definitely. But I mean, if I again look at Sollentuna, since they decide themselves, so we can't really decide for them. They have to talk with their teachers.
Maybe
so you can't.
Sorry, Simon.
I was going to say, you can't impact on assessment period or end of term because it's too busy doing something else. So you do communication and liaising with the academies and in our case, the rest of the organisation, in hand with the point in time that the lease is due, to just try and line everything up. And then it just happens. We are quite a doing organisation, so it does just happen. Sorry,
Catherine, you were going to say something?
I think it's leaving yourself a lot of time to plan and to have planning meetings, so everything's lined up, ready to go, whether that's your data, how you collect the iPads in, what you do with the cases, where do you store them, because as we found out, I don't know about you, Simon, but 7,500 iPads takes up a lot of space, and there is no space in school to have this much in usually. So think about where you could store them. We've collected them all in centrally, so we haven't done it on a school location basis, just so we can get eyes on them as well. And so there's a bit of logistics and planning for the build and for the return, and they kind of all go hand in hand. So you've got a lot of things going on at once about deliveries. We are trying as much as we can to recycle, so recycling the packaging, new packaging, using it for old, using it for other packaging, recycling the cases, and that's a good story to share, with parents and young people. And I suppose the refresh is, when we started ours, we tried really hard to plan about the experience of the young person, how they would take ownership of the iPad. They built the iPad themselves. We wanted them to feel valued as a young learner in Borders. So how do you create that experience in that moment in time that they will remember? Because it is transformational for some young people, to open and take the cellophane off, and that's the part that they remember. But when you're doing refresh, how do you create a similar experience that feels just as special? at the same time as, you know, you've got thousands to collect back in, and it's not one in, one out, but it still feels like an experience for a young person. So take time to plan and really think about the logistics and how a young person still feels while getting a new device. And ours, I think, I was saying we probably did too good a job, because our sixth formers didn't want to actually hand their iPad back because it felt like theirs. Even though it was in maybe a case that was a bit worn and a bit dirty, it was theirs, and so they didn't want to hand it back. So really think about, for next time we were just too late to think about, do we just let them keep their iPad and not return it? Do we charge a small amount of money for them to keep it? Do you know, who are the ones who you know, who are maybe have experienced poverty, that you should just really let them have it and not return it, because once they leave school, they might not have access to a device. So think about these things and how much it may be, so that when you get to that stage, you're ready for the answers and you're not like us trying to come at it too late, you know, and it was too late to organise that financial part within our sort of local government systems.
That's a good tip. I've also had schools that have either sold the iPads, given the iPads, or actually sold the iPads to other schools. That's also an idea. So I think, Kaisa, you've already answered this question, maybe in part. So who is part of the decision making when it comes to refresh, when there's a refresh in the horizon?
Well, the school leadership teams, the local ones, as I've mentioned before. But we can tell them to stop using some devices because they are a safety hazard in the end when they're really old. But I would say that our discussions with the school leadership teams have sort of shifted more towards the user experience since we did our study. And now we ask them very nicely, and we help them also to plan for a sustainable refresh cycle, because it is crucial that the teachers and the students have devices that work and work well in teaching and learning. And it's also, you know, it's also better financially to sell off the old devices before they get too old. And it's, of course, better environmentally as well to sell them off than, you know, throw them away at the end when they don't work at all. So we try to sort of educate the school leadership teams and help them and show them different ways to do it. So that's what we do right now.
And I think the last question I have is, do you have a reseller for buyback and refresh? So do you sell to the resellers if the devices are in good shape?
Well, if you're asking me, I would say we do now since August.
Okay.
So it's quite new, but since we identified this problem with old devices in some of our schools, so our reseller has helped us now to organize a trade-in agreement. So hopefully now we can help our school leadership teams with their budget planning and help them to sort of reduce the cost of investing in new devices, and of course to get rid of the old ones.
Okay. I have tons of other questions, but I don't think we have time for that today. But my own experience, I would say there's one tip I would give you all listeners, is that send out a profile to all your devices, that if the students fail or the teachers fail with 5 logins, the device resets itself. That has helped us immensely when we have a device refresh. When we have iPads students have given us and we don't have their password, and we have to go through the process of trying to delete all the information on them. So that really helps. Just a tip that I remember from before. And also the device refresh, when they're too old, the price, let's say there's not an iOS update available anymore, they tend to drop a lot in price and the residual value for the iPads. But thank you so much, all of you, to join us today. And I'm going to let Craig to finish up today. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Jesper, and thanks to all our speakers. I know we've actually got a little bit of time remaining if there was any audience questions, if any of you had any questions, not necessarily just about device refresh like we've been focusing on today. As Kaisia, Simon and Catherine have sort of communicated, they've been doing deployments with Apple devices for a number of years now, and have probably learned a lot along the way, having done this for many years now. So if there is any questions, I know we had quite a few about apps and stuff like that, and in some of the comments there, if there is any other questions that you have for our panelists while we have this time together, I would encourage you to post them now. Or do we have a shy group today? Sometimes we get shy groups, sometimes we get very... here we go. Okay. Any... someone asking about training, modifications from Jamf. Yeah, so I could probably take that one, and Simon, I might lean on you for this also. So someone's asking about will there be any training provided for any of the new modifications to Jamf? One of the best resources I think we've got is twofold really, is our online training catalogue, which we're very proud of. We developed it over a number of years, and it's been refreshed continually and added to, and that's free for all current customers. And then we talked about the Jamf Nation user conference, but the online Jamf Nation is a fantastic resource to go to ask questions and speak there with your peers. And we do have a dedicated section there also. I'm just going down some of the other questions. We've got quite a lot of comments. Okay. Setup. Okay. Patrick's asking about Jamf Web. Say some more details about setup. Patrick, maybe get you to elaborate on that one, or if you're referring to Jamf Safe Internet again, I would refer you to some of the courses that we've got on the training platform, both for Jamf Pro and Jamf School. So whether you which platform you're choosing to deploy that with, we've got a couple of different ways to do that. It is a little bit easier in Jamf School, as Matt said, that it is our flagship product for K-12 now, so we've made it a little bit simpler there. A couple of extra steps for Jamf Pro, but still very, very easy to deploy. Do we sell Jamf Pro to schools in exceptional cases? Well, we make that as a choice, really. Simon at Oasis uses Jamf Pro. Catherine at Scottish Borders uses Jamf Pro. Casey, I'm forgive my ignorance, I'm not too sure what you're using.
Jamf School.
Jamf School. So yeah, and really it is down to choice. Yes, we've seen some new things come into Jamf School that are obviously very focused on education, but we understand we've still got a lot of long-standing Jamf customers that have chosen Jamf Pro for their own sort of personal reasons. So yes, you've got the choice of which platform you'd like to use. And we've got a question here just around leasing. So I'll pass this one to the panel. So Paul is asking, regarding the concept of leased iPads, what sort of health data can be gathered from the devices to give an indication that a device may have been damaged? The student has not come forward with this. So Catherine, I'll probably put that one to you, because I know you've just been going through quite a large refresh.
Yeah, there's not. So some young people are actually a bit reticent to let you know they've damaged it. I think there's a little bit of a fear factor, even though in Borders we say, if it's damaged, we're not going to ask for a contribution. We've given schools some budget to cover that, so that there's never that awkwardness. But some youngsters live with a cracked screen, and we just don't know.
Yeah.
And we've seen everything from a minor bit to a bench chassis and the whole gambit in the middle. So there is no way
Yeah.
to do it until we collect it in. So nothing through Jamf that we can do, just collecting them in and schools managing that on their own.
So we've created a kind of dashboard in Power BI that shows the devices that haven't checked in with Jamf for a certain period of time. So that then enables both the IT teams and our academies to see, little Johnny hasn't put his iPad in now for 6 weeks. Where is it? And then they can proactively go and find it to say, right, what's the problem? But because of the, as I mentioned earlier on, the deprivation areas we work in, we don't always charge families. If it's a one-off incident, then we won't charge. If it's a continuing problem, we might levy a small fee. But again, it's academy choice whether they want to levy that fee or not in terms of replacing the iPad.
The other thing, Craig, that we've done is just recently put in if a device is not checked in, say for 90 days, it's put into loss mode, and if it's turned back on, we have to rebuild so that we pull that report off Jamf. Sometimes it could be maybe a head teacher who's maybe not checked in, and a little email just to say, do you realise that you've not updated your iPad? But it just managing your Jamf instance is really important so that it's clear as you can get it. And those, if an iPad's been broken and our youngster's got a new one, that there's a process behind that, so they've not got two devices sitting in Jamf.
Yeah, it's a great call out, I think, by both of you, yourself and Simon, about some of the data that we can give you some insights into perhaps what's going on in the individual schools or with those individual students or teachers around, could the device be broken, as we've mentioned, but also, maybe there's a reason that they're not engaging with the device and it's been switched off and put in a drawer, which is obviously the last thing that any of us want. And I think some really great tips there for sort of getting data and then looking about how we can use that data impactfully to go and speak to those individuals or schools around, could it be they're just fearful that you say the device is broken, or perhaps it could be, well, I'm not that confident using the device like Matt talked about earlier, and maybe there's some more professional development needed there as well.
I'd just add to Paul's question as well. As far as leasing goes and Apple's kind of financial services, they expect an iPad back of the same make and model that was leased. It doesn't necessarily have to be the exact same serial number on the device. Yeah. So you can manage your estate that way. As long as they get 100 iPads back that they gave you of the same model and above, then Apple leasing would be quite happy.
Yeah, Catherine, we were talking about that a couple of weeks ago, actually, which is great because then you can imagine the logistical challenge of trying to gather all them in, wipe them, and then send stuff back. But imagine having to do the exact serial numbers would be even more of a daunting task. So that is good that.
I mean, we are checking off serial numbers just as more of a data cleanse for Jamf to make sure that nothing's on it that shouldn't be, and they're using Jamf really well around the new builds, etc. But we're wiping them before I know Apple, we leased our iPads, give you a certificate for wiping, but good practice is that you wipe it before, because it's got your youngster's date on it, but actually getting the process right before it comes in centrally. So what's the expectation of the school? That we've got a QR code for it, that they wipe it, that they take the case off it. So we're not spending time, taking 7,000 cases off iPads before they're boxed. So those kind of little things is, if you've got, it depends on the volume sign. I don't know if you've got 52,000 to do, hopefully in stages. You need to think about what can a school get done before it gets into a collection, and so you've got the less hands essentially on it when it comes back.
Yeah, it's about understanding what's your level of responsibility, and then at that point you hand it over. And I think it's better that you're the one that presses that reset or erase all content and settings button in some ways, because then it's the responsibility sort of lies with you. There's a couple of questions come in. There's two sort of linked questions. One question from Louise asks, what are the devices your teachers are issued with, and why? So perhaps there's maybe some, I've seen in some deployments where teachers have got a slightly different device. Maybe sometimes that's a MacBook, but sometimes it's maybe an iPad Pro. So curious to know what you all do there. Simon, I'll come to you first on that one.
They get the same as a student device. There's no differentiation at all. We didn't really see any benefit on a higher end device, and for functionality and everything, just a normal iPad does just fine.
I think that's really important because it's, everybody's valued, and once you get a better device than the other, that we had a group of students doing app development, and they had access to iMacs, but actually it was really important that they could do everything they wanted on their iPad, which was theirs, and not something different. So everybody, they get a different colour case, that's all, but the same device.
Yeah, and it seems, our school leaders choose themselves. I think I mentioned that now, but I know that
yes.
most of them have MacBook Air. And I know that some schools, they have MacBook. Everyone wants to have, both a MacBook Air and an iPad, like a student iPad. And in some schools, they have the economy to provide that. In some other schools, they've actually offered the teachers to, instead of having a MacBook Air and an iPad, a standard iPad, they offered them to sort of switch to a large 12-inch iPad Pro with a pencil, a fancy pencil and a really nice keyboard case as well. And I think we got about perhaps 30 teachers in Sollentuna that has, switched completely and left the MacBook as well and just use the iPad Pro, the 12-inch. So that's it.
Which segues nicely into another question that we have here around. It says here teachers are hesitant to switch from one technology to another. So I guess if you're switching maybe from an iPad to an iPad Pro, that's, there's not much difference there. But you mentioned before around you've used different types of technology, Chrome devices, and perhaps there's been a cycle of we'll try something and then we'll move on to something else. Has that been a challenge? Have you found that teachers or head teachers have found that particularly difficult to transition?
Definitely. And when I worked locally at a school, like an ICT coordinator, I had teachers that had, a Windows PC before, and now they got a MacBook. And so you have to really teach them how to use it. And in those schools that switched to the iPad Pro, the large one, there are usually groups that are sort of, supportive groups to help them over the threshold, really. You have to sort of hold their hands when they do this transition, but you have to sort of, as soon as you can show them what effect it would have, and that they would use the sort of same technology as their students and the benefits from it, then you have to sort of convince them why, and you have to hold their hands and sort of encourage them all the way. And you can't let them loose too early. Some of them you have to hold the hand all throughout the first school year. And some of them you just need to send some links, go into Apple Teacher, and they just throw themselves at it, and then they are fine. So it's very different.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think it's about showing them what the art of the possible is. It's like teaching has now moved a long way from stood at the teacher wall with a laptop plugged into a board and lecturing at the class, whereas now with an iPad, you can be amongst the class or even at the back of the class while you're airplaying from your iPad, showing the class or even demonstrating the class work from your own iPad to the rest of them. And I think it's just that, I think Kaiser said, it's like almost being brave to try something new, really, rather than stuck at the front.
Yeah, and as soon as you show them the possibilities with the camera for themselves, and to make simple movies and stuff, they are usually convinced. But it is difficult to sort of let loose of that old habit, of course.
And of course, leadership as well. Sorry, Craig. Around setting your expectations about using it with your staff. That it's not going to sit in a drawer. And if you find that one thing, so for a senior leader, they would have a different device usually. But if you were able to demonstrate how to make their job easier, So maybe quality assurance or self-evaluation on the move instead of taking a lap. So it's finding that thing. Is it okay? That makes my life easier. I can live with 2 devices because they do different things.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. Matt, I was just about to bring you in here. Obviously, I know you've had a lot of experience of helping teachers build confidence, trying to embed technology into the practice. We'll invite you to comment on that as well.
Yeah, I think it's been said, like in terms of that, having the same device as what your students have is pretty important, because like teachers put a lot of time and effort into planning. And if you don't know what a student can do with the device they have, you can't really plan fully for what the potential outcomes could be. And I guess with using iPad and the creativity, like the opportunities are so vast at what a student could do. If you're not aware of that as a teacher, you could almost narrow it too much. And I think where I've worked with schools to kind of change a deployment from just an IT development focus to a teaching and learning focus, the one change has been make sure the teachers know what the tool can do. And I think the best outcomes are then when you see teachers being creative in their delivery, because they've just uncovered, oh, actually, do you know, I could make a great movie to introduce this topic. So instead of just the students making a movie to showcase what they've done, I'm going to use a movie, or I'm going to use Keynote in a different way to demonstrate knowledge, because I'm going to use animations and kind of move it on from maybe that standard presentation, which is just information giving, to something which is more interactive for the students to utilize. So I think in making sure teachers can see the full power of what students can do, you definitely close the gap between the teaching and the learning. It becomes kind of more joined up. And I think, you know, we've got 3 proponents of education systems that are doing exactly this, you know, making sure that everybody's using the device to its full capability. And I think, like, don't underestimate the power of an iPad. Like, an iPad Pro is great. I use an iPad Pro myself, but the basic iPad still does an awful lot of stuff. You know, it's still a powerful tool. It's not like you need that and something else, because it's both a productivity and creativity tool at the same time. So
Definitely, but I noticed that they like the larger screens. As you get older, you have problems with the small screens.
That's 100% why I use it.
Yeah. So you can't really convince them to sort of make that switch unless it's a larger screen. So that's why the iPad Pro, the 12-inch, is a good one for you know, for the teachers, that switch from the MacBook to the iPad. But I completely agree with you. Functionality wise, it's just the same as a small one, and which is great that, you know, you can do everything with it.
Absolutely. A couple of other questions coming in, slightly different question, but very good point as well. So we've obviously been talking about the planfulness around refresh and how important that is, and certainly that's something I took away, is the planning is absolutely critical. But in terms of planning for maybe that initial deployment, or maybe you're expanding your one-to-one program, maybe you started in a couple of year groups within an organization and going kind of full scale. Paresh has asked about things like bandwidth, internet speeds. You know, what considerations, I see Simon got a wry smile on his face around, what considerations did you have to undertake there from moving maybe from a couple of thousand to tens of thousands of devices? And how did you approach that, I suppose?
I still won't forget the conversation where the IT director phoned me up and said, we want to deploy a one-to-one scheme. And I thought to myself, how hard can it be? And in fact, it's really, really hard. I think, you know, I think just don't take anything for granted. We went round and we upgraded all of our internet connections. We put in hundreds of additional access points that were higher density access points. We surveyed every single nook and cranny of an academy to make sure we would have signal and enough throughput to deal with it all. We deployed 56, 57 caching servers across the estate to make sure that we would have enough caching capacity to save on internet bandwidth. And even doing all of that, you know, you still get caught out. There are still the gotchas where there's a spot that you missed, or, you know, that you thought that a primary academy would have enough bandwidth to cope, but actually the primary school was as big as some of our smaller secondaries, so therefore they needed to be tweaked. And even now, you know, what we know 2-3 years on from the initial project, we are changing our WAN topology now to go a full SD-WAN setup with dual lines in every academy, so that if one fails, they can still function. So I think, you know, just don't take anything for granted. You can't. It's one of those things that you can't test at scale. You can do all of the testing with a number of devices with a small number of users. You know, we ran a pilot in academy, but until you start ramping that up, you know, Craig and I and some of the great guys from the Jamf support teams, you know, we spent hours on the phone talking about best practice and the best way to do things until you get there. But you will get caught out. I think that's just a given.
Yeah, no, I think it's a great point. It's you almost have to overcompensate as well, don't you? Because it's just impossible to tell what you will need in many ways. And Catherine, I'm sure during your initial secondary deployments, you had to switch lanes a little bit in terms of the infrastructure as well.
Yeah, we did. I mean, previously, so we had almost like two networks in our schools, and we sort of put in a new network, and I would say aim to have an AP in every classroom, you know, because the certain buildings, they just won't go through the wall. If you've got 30 in a class trying to upload stuff and assessment on their iPad, they need one in every classroom. I think that's kind of the standard one. We also changed, we upgraded our pipe into our high schools to 2 gig as a minimum, but we put it on a 10 gig bearer. So we've built capacity as we, in case we increase, but also I think what we didn't expect was it's not just the iPads that are connecting to your APs, it's every phone in every kid's pocket is trying to connect it. So, you know, as you're trying to test, it's really great. we surveyed all our schools' heat maps with our primaries and secondaries, but until you get the kids in the building and until you've got every device that's trying to connect, you know, it's really hard to test without actually being live. So we've had to do things as we go along around about some of the maintenance and making sure that, you know, things are really upgraded, up to date, ready, especially after school holidays. You know, if Simon says we've got caching servers, we realised our primaries had more capacity in their caching servers than our secondaries, so we had to swap them over. And just about the monitoring, because it is that experience for the people, you know, to make sure that, you know if an AP goes down, that you're swift, that you're not waiting on schools actually telling you, oh, Wi-Fi is really slow, but actually there's some sort of monitoring in the background. It means, right, okay, so let's just check. But, you know, those housekeeping technical things really help us coming back after the holidays when we're, you know, we've got thousands of iPads to build, you've got some kids building for the first time, so that you've not got a big IT issue. And touch wood, we've not had one for quite a while, which you forget, you know, so you still got little problems, you know, but actually you've not got the big ones that you might have had within sort of the first year that as you're getting to know the infrastructure.
I think just to add as well, iPads are quite chatty devices, and whilst their chattiness might not always take bandwidth on a raw internet connection, they will take up a lot of sessions on things like your firewalls and your web filtering tools. So that's, if you're looking at a really big deployment, that is something you really need to look at. You know, how many sessions does your firewall or firewalls, how many can they cope with? And is your monitoring solution man enough to cope with the volume of traffic you're going to be pushing through as well?
And just one point I was thinking while you were talking to Catherine around the device choice as well. I mean, iPad is actually a really great tool offline as well. You know, there's a lot you can still do with it. You don't need to always have it connected to internet. Okay, normally it will be when it's in school, of course, and when it's at home, but there's a lot of application that you can put it to.
And that's right, we picked it
online, offline.
Yeah, we're rural, you know, our bus service is, I keep saying it's great north to south and it's rubbish east to west. You know, it's one bus an hour, do you know?
Yeah.
So when we did a lot of our research, it was around about still having the creativity tools, still being able to access work offline, because we've got young people who stay up valleys in really remote areas and, you know, poor phone signal. So they still have to be able to access their work and do it. And we've got great little videos of kids that have made, they stay away out in the country on a farm, they're on the school bus, they've got their iPads out, you know, they're doing their schoolwork on the way in. So it's not about just coming through the front doors of the school, but actually all the bits before and after and what it allows them to do at home. So that was really important for us about that offline and still being able to make a wee movie or do your homework and be creative at home without the internet. And I think that's a good thing, not to just keep shoveling access to the internet all the time, you know. One of our main reasons for why the iPad.
100%, yeah. And Simon, just where you were talking about filtering and the chattiness of the devices, you put it, I'm excited to see what, you know, potentially what on-device content filtering can do in that space to maybe mitigate against some of that, so that more is happening on the device itself rather than having to connect to somewhere in the cloud or a box in the academy to sort of handle those requests, so that we can improve the bandwidth, but also improve that experience on the devices themselves. So for the student or the teacher using it. I'm just checking questions here. I think we'll probably exhaust all our questions. Just before we wrap up, Matt, I know you were maybe going to share a story just from a customer story. I thought it'd be a nice way to wrap this up.
Yeah, I guess just as we were talking about like the pinch points that everyone deals with, and this isn't to undermine your pinch points, right? So everyone on the panel, this is not undermining it. It's just almost a sign of hope. So we had a customer from America talk about their refresh on stage. Only briefly, they mentioned about how simple it was to do it. And they did it outside of the normal window to when they would do it. And they actually refreshed thousands of devices in 3 days. And almost to everyone's point, the key element was planning. Like, just if you've got all your planning in place, the actual changing over of devices within Jamf was seamless and easy. And I think, Simon, you mentioned it, like there's just a lot of things you need to line up before you push the button to do it, because, you know, having devices stored up in a room takes up space. So just making sure that you know exactly the logistics. She likened it to like an army operation, like deploying like troops abroad or whatever it might be, because everything just had to be done. But once you triggered it, actually the changeover was really easy. Students gave in a device, had a device back, and it was in the same state it was when they handed in their old device. So really, really quick and easy. So I just thought I'd share that as hope, I guess, for everybody, that it can work very, very smoothly, but you do have to put a lot of work behind the scenes.
And it does, Matt. I think what's great is we don't have to think about the Jamf bit, because it just works. You know, that's not something we have to plan for. We just know that when we authenticate, the kids build it. Actually, the kids were better than the teachers. The kids knew their logins. They built it fast, and off it went, and it just works. And I think it's the bits that you don't see in the background that Jamf just makes it so easy for us to deploy and to build, that we, you know, if you've got it set up right, then it's really simple, and you shouldn't notice it, and our teachers and young people don't notice it, but they do expect it to work really well.
Absolutely. Thanks so much. Great. Well, I think we will call it a close there. I just want to thank everyone for giving up their time to join us today. Thanks everyone for the questions as well. It's always better when we get that interactivity. We hope you enjoyed some of the announcements that Matt shared with us. You know, as you've probably come to expect with Jamf, we will always support the latest and greatest from Apple on sort of day of release, which is, as I say, you've come to expect. But it's also that bit in between, how we enhance that Apple experience even further, and really love some of those great features with Classroom and with the Mac management on Jamf School as well. Special thanks to all of our speakers today. Thanks to Matt and Jesper, and very, very special thanks to Catherine, Keisha and Simon for sharing your thoughts, your insights and your stories with us. So thank you for giving up your time. We really, really appreciate it. And I hope everyone has a great evening. We hope to see you again at future Jamf events, either in person, hopefully, or if not, here online. So thanks once again. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.